become very jaded in their experiences. There's a need for continual and more extreme stimulation. It relates to I think a lot of it relates to the stimulation that people have with television. Murders, violence, sexual stimulation. All of this stimulation is taking place within the brain. MTV is a powerful example of this, of just massive stimulation. What's happening, even I think Sesame Street, which is in a lot of ways seen as a very positive thing, I think for teachers it's a disaster because you're competing with entertainment. A child begins to think that, you have to be entertained to learn. There has to be these cartoons coming in and this and that, and it all has to be fast. There's a cartoon of a little boy sitting in front of a forest and asking his father, "What's the plot?" Right? So there's this idea, of really, just this culture has become massive stimulation. Toffler's The Fast World. There's a beautiful film called Powakatsi. Is the second one Powakatsi? Wonderful film by a local filmmaker. And one of the things that he does in there is he's got the third world in slow motion. Right? So you see people like farming in Brazil and things. Traditional farming is all in slow motion. But then when he switches to America, it's all fast motion. And it's interesting what he's trying, what he's juxtaposing. Like he showed people eating in fast food restaurants really fast, and it's very, very strong to watch it. But the point being is that we are in a hyper-stimulatory state. What happens you reach thresholds, you want more stimulation. Now, there are people now that go out and do things to taste the moment that become very extreme and violent. Gangbangers. You see, adrenaline junkies. When I was in an intensive care unit, and I used to go down to the ERs sometime, and in the ER room, it's really interesting that what a lot of the nurses that work in ERs and doctors do on the weekends, jump out of airplanes, hang gliding, these jumping, bungee jumping. Because if you work in intensive care, crack a chest open, cardiac massage, very intense. They really get into the rush of adrenaline and things. And then on the weekend, it's like, what's there to do? That's an interesting phenomenon. Really, it really is. Adrenaline's a very powerful drug. And we forget that there really is an adrenaline, it's a very high drug. Right? And one of the things that happens when they see things that they shouldn't see, the heart begins to beat faster. Right? For instance, people that, they've done studies with people that watch pornography and things like that. Stimulation, rapid heartbeat, adrenaline rushes, things like that. Initially, but then more stimulation. They need more stimulation. Right? And the end result is a snuff film or something like that. Really, there's people that's what they need to be stimulated. These are very serious, from an Islamic worldview, very serious ways of attempting to assuage this emptiness, to feel alive. Now, for the Muslim, the goal in life is to reach a type of tranquility, not the stimulation. It is to reach a point where the stimulation is not needed for one to feel alive. That what one feels alive through a peace, an inner peace, which is achieved through worship. Through prayer and these things. So the dunya is the worldly existence, and the dunya also has 7 stages. The first stage is the infantile stage. Now it's interesting, the word in Arabic for the child is ghulam. The first stage of dunya is ghulam, which means lusty. That's what it means, ghulma, to lust. And this is the infantile state. There's a lust, there's a desire. And then it moves into the young adulthood. That ghulam goes to about 15 years of age, from birth to 15 years. And then young adulthood, which is where hopefully the child has been humanized in that first 15 years of life to where they're safe to the society and they're safety to themselves. Then it moves to what's called the kahl, or the middle-aged person.
What's the second stage called? First is lusty, second is?
The second is, it would be like a moving into what's called shabab, and it relates to fire. The second is shabab, and it comes from a root word which means fire. So this is where you have the fire of life. The first would be spring, the second would be like summer. There's a fire, it's heat, it's intensity, there's a lot of energy to do things. The third stage is reaching the kahal, which is related to maturity. It's related to productivity, where the person, now the fire has been used usefully, right? So there's something cooked there. There's been something cooked and it's something worthwhile now. There's benefit to be had. And then you go into the fourth, which is the adulthood, which is a rajul or a imra'a, which is full. And this begins at 40, right? This begins at about 35. Small window here. So youth is from about 15 to 35. This is 1 to 15. 40 is a very important year in the Islamic view, because it's when the human being is at their full maturity. The intellect is fully mature. The body has reached its full maturity. And now, from this point, you go into the fifth one is where you reach at about 60, and you go into what's called the sheikh period, where the person is now like an elder, somebody who they have wisdom, they have a type of presence within the society that is beneficial.
How do you spell that?
Sheikh, S-H-A-I-K-H. And then, there's a stage here that's broken up, which would lead to 7, which is the sabi, which is the infant, first 5 years or first 7 years. But the last and final stage is called the ajuz. And it's interesting that the male and the female are the same. There's no differentiation. It's a male, the word for ajuz applies to the male and the female. And this is beyond, this is where they've entered like 75, 80 years of age. There's a transcendence of the gender at this point. There's a type of, in fact, in the Islamic culture, traditionally, at about 60, the woman will begin to, there's open mixing in many, many cultures, traditionally, as the woman enters into that period of life. She's considered like, there's a wisdom that she should be present, that she should be in that environment. And then ajuz is that last phase. Now death is the third stage. Now the Quran says some people die early and others, Allah gives them, extends their life. If a person dies before puberty, they're not taken into account at all. And they're considered for paradise generally. That is the majority view. If they die after puberty, they're taken into account for their actions.